In my last video, I stated that no vaccines are safe, which leads to the question, will they ever be safe? I don't think so, and here's my reasoning. The vaccine idea sounds logical, and that's how they get you to do it, because it sounds good. They say, here, just inject these parts of pathogenic organisms like bacteria and viruses into your body, create an immune response without creating the disease symptoms, and then when you get infected, you'll have protection. But did you hear what I just said? When you get infected, you'll have some protection. The injected vaccine procedure will not prevent you from becoming infected. It's only supposed to react to the infection after it happens. All injectable vaccines are designed that way. Unfortunately, somehow people got the idea that injecting that stuff would prevent the infection from happening. And Big Pharma loves that because they know it can't prevent infections. But they're okay with you believing that it does because you'll keep demanding it and they'll stay rich. But they still got you. Because even when you figure out that injectable vaccines can't prevent you from becoming infected, they have you convinced that the serum antibodies created by injecting that crap will bind to the invading organism after you get infected, stop it from entering cells, and then lessen your disease symptoms. So think that through. You're infected, but you might not know it, and that makes you, the injected person, a threat to immunosuppressed people that are around you. Communicable diseases are called contagious because the organisms associated with disease symptoms move between us all the time. It's the organisms that are contagious, whatever you want to call them. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, spores, fungi, extraneous genetic material, it really doesn't matter. It's the things that are contagious, not the disease symptoms. Whether you will display symptoms or not depends on the ability of your immune system to deal with those things. So if you, the injected person, are infected and suppressing your symptoms, you are a threat to vulnerable and susceptible people around you. You're not protecting them at all. But you might think, I don't care. I'm afraid of getting sick and I want to get injected so I can make those serum antibodies that won't protect me from getting infected, won't stop me from spreading it, but might make my symptoms less. That is certainly your choice and the choice that vaccine makers want you to make. But let me explain to you how dangerous that is. First, whatever you get injected with must be biologically active and have the right shape to attach to ligands on human tissue cells. If the injected material does not have the right shape that would attach to human cells, it would not result in the right kind of serum antibodies. In other words, if the Y-shaped serum antibodies created by the shot can't block the real thing from attaching to human cells when you get exposed to it, and you most certainly will be exposed, they would be useless. Biologically, what happens is this. Antigen-presenting cells, specifically your B cells, macrophages, and dendritic cells, will chop up whatever you got injected with into smaller protein pieces called peptides, and they'll show those pieces to T helper cells. The T helper cells are what determine self from non-self proteins. When those T helper cells recognize that what you got injected with is foreign, they do two things. First, they activate cytotoxic T cells to kill any cells that are making that protein. Second, they help B cells make Y-shaped antibodies against that injected protein that will not attack your own body. Here's the problem. B cells are what make antibodies, and if they get overstimulated by injected foreign proteins that are in the shot, they can autoactivate, turn into plasma cells, and start cranking out dangerous antibodies that will attack your own body. and you're stuck with them for the rest of your life because they have memory. That's why every vaccine package insert lists autoimmune diseases as possible adverse reactions. And that's exactly why chronic autoimmune diseases like type 1 diabetes, celiac, thyroid, multiple sclerosis, and rheumatoid arthritis are on the rise, especially in children that followed the recommended CDC vaccine schedule. Regulators won't admit that yet, but they will. Here's another problem. Let's say you were lucky enough to not have that autoimmune reaction. Well, it takes about 2 weeks for your T helper cells to help your B cells create those serum antibodies that will not attack your own body. So what happens to those injected proteins during those 2 weeks? Remember, they are biologically active, meaning the ones that aren't immediately gobbled up by antigen-presenting cells can attach to various tissue cells. This creates an inflammatory immune response that will result in tissue damage, loss of structure, and pathology. What tissues are we talking about? Well, it depends on what proteins you were injected with. As an example, the proteins in the RSV shot will attach to myelin sheaths around your nerve tissues and oligodendrocytes in your brain, resulting in Guillain-Barré syndrome in some vaccine recipients, including children. That's why the FDA demanded a black box warning about Guillain-Barré syndrome in the vaccine package insert. Parents, why would you knowingly subject your child to that when the symptoms of RSV can be easily managed, but Guillain-Barré syndrome is serious? Another danger is they must use living tissues to economically make those proteins that people get injected with because they need tons of them. The living tissues can be from animals, bacteria, insects, or aborted human fetal cell lines. There will be DNA from those tissues in some of those shots, and the possibility of integration into cell lines that results in cancer of the injected person is real. And yes, unexplained cancers in younger and younger people are definitely on the rise. Another danger is toxic adjuvants are included in these shots to help stimulate the immune system to recognize what was injected. And one of those adjuvants is aluminum hydroxide that stimulates an inflammatory pathway in natural killer cells or NK cells. NK cells are prevalent in newborns and infants, especially for immune surveillance in cerebrovascular tissues. Normally, these NK cells are not cytotoxic, but the presence of aluminum hydroxide in childhood vaccines activates an inflammatory pathway that makes them secrete inflammatory cytokines, resulting in brain swelling and subsequent autism, something that regulators haven't figured out yet, but they will. Adjuvants are dangerous for sure. So here's an idea. Let's remove all the toxic adjuvants and just inject the mRNA message to make a foreign protein and have the cells of the injected person make foreign proteins. That way it'll be safer, right? No adjuvants. Wrong. Our cells are making proteins all the time, and our T cells are monitoring that process constantly to make sure dangerous non-self proteins don't get made and released. When you allow yourself to be injected with man-made, modified messenger RNA in these shots, you are exposing the walls of your blood vessels and organ tissues all through your body to this mRNA, and those tissues will start making foreign proteins. Activated cytotoxic T cells will destroy those cells before the proteins even get released. This will result in various degrees of tissue damage and pathology depending upon what tissues are involved and where the tip of the needle was when the plunger was pushed, something that you have no control over. Cytotoxic T cells will not be able to destroy all of the cells that are making the protein because you injected yourself with tens of billions of particles, each one capable of delivering mRNA. So foreign proteins do get made and do get released. Remember, the proteins are biologically active, can attach to tissue cells, and kick off the inflammatory immune reactions that always happen with traditional shots called vaccines that we just talked about. And you don't know where that's going to happen either. So the question you got to ask yourself is this: do you feel lucky? Well, do you? How about just coding the mRNA to make antibodies and inject that and skip the whole process of making dangerous biologically active proteins? Just directly make antibodies. That'll be safer, right? Not really, because cytotoxic T cells will still destroy cells that are making those antibodies. So you're right back to where you started, and there's no way around that. Okay, how about this? Forget about the mRNA. How about we just take parts of the organism that aren't dangerous and will not attach to cells, like the nucleocapsid proteins on the virus, and inject those instead, and it'll be safer? Well, if you do that, the serum antibodies that get produced will not stop the real thing from attaching to your cells. It would be completely useless. It's such a dumb idea that vaccine manufacturers won't even try to do it. Okay, how about we take the whole organism, not just a piece of it, the whole thing, and modify it so that the cells of the body will not copy it. Inject that, then we can get a more robust immune response that should still be able to block mutations when they occur. Well, guess what? That's called the Next Generation Universal Vaccine Program that HHS is already wasting $500 million of your money looking into. It's still dangerous because whatever they injected will still attach to human cells and create an inflammatory tissue damaging response during that time it takes to make those antibodies. And it won't protect you from becoming infected anyway because it will not stimulate the production of secretory IgA antibodies that go back into the mucosal linings and can prevent future infections from happening. You can only get secretory IgA from natural exposures where the organisms come through that cellular epithelial barrier from the outside to the inside. Wait a second, hold on. What if we just skip the needle and have the person either inhale something or swallow something that will come through the epithelial barrier and create that secretory IgA? Well, that's not a new idea, and it's already been tried with the oral polio vaccine, and it ended up causing vaccine-strain-induced polio. Why? Because you cannot control the strengths of the doses, nor do you know the condition of the immune systems of the people who swallow it, or inhale it if you're stupid enough to try that. And I didn't even talk about the devastating antibody-dependent enhancement that can happen after artificially boosting antibody production with shots called vaccines. So no, we will never have safe vaccines, no matter how you administer them. The safest thing to do is to let natural exposures happen, most of which will be asymptomatic anyway. Let that natural immunity happen. And don't mess with it by injecting something that will refocus immune cells and antibodies on the thing that you just injected, not what's in the environment that you're constantly exposed to anyway. Concentrate on building strong immunity through clean diet, exercise, sunshine, fresh air, and vitamin supplementation when necessary. And when symptoms happen, do not be fearful and know that they can be managed. If we do those simple things, we can make America healthy again. As always, thanks for watching and thanks for staying smart.